But if anyone feels as if they've been intimidated or have difficulty in voting at the polls, please call the county clerk's office if you're out in the county, or the city election commission if you have any complaints on election day.
I'll move quickly into these questions. The first is hiring practices as it relates to African Americans in the offices of elected officials is dismal. What would you do to recruit African Americans into your office? And that goes for each of the candidates.
When I was appointed, I was approached by Mr. Jackson, and I respected him and I respect his issue. And as a result of his direction, I did call the University of Illinois. I asked for the dean, but I spoke to an administrator and indicated that we would be willing to consider all applications, but that we did want African American applications. I stressed that. I also, after that, and this is only because I knew one of the professors at St. Louis University, I contacted Pete Salsick and spoke to him about the increase. Currently, we have one African American in our office, Vincent Kale, who does an excellent job. I have addressed that with him. I've talked to him about that, as well as Syed Ahmed. So I welcome an opportunity to increase the number. I have reached out to the University of Illinois, St. Louis University School of Law. I have to admit that I'm selfish because St. Louis University School of Law is my alma mater.
At the risk of sounding like I'm pandering, I do have a diversity program that I would put in place. In fact, I sent it in an email to Jackie Petty in July of last year. What I propose is nothing new, and it's not going to be reinventing the wheel. The courts has a program in place right now that brings in qualified candidates to work for the courts. What I would propose is I would look for qualified minority candidates that would want to come to Peoria to work in the state's attorney's office on a 7-Eleven license. That would allow them to actually try cases while they're at the state's attorney's office to get criminal law experience. But I want to take it a step further. I would reach out to the larger law firms in Peoria and have them work with me so we could expand that pool from just not 1 or 2 candidates, but to 5 or 6, and have them work part of the summer with those larger law firms, but also work at the state's attorney's office to get that trial experience that they simply wouldn't get in at another law firm or in another venue.
My office is a little bit different than the state's attorney or the sheriff's office or the circuit clerk's office, where there are a lot of employees. As I mentioned before, the turnover in my office has been minimal. It's specified as far as you need someone that's accurate, dependable. They have a good working knowledge of the computer system. And, you know, when we did hire someone, we interviewed all of the candidates and chose the only one that came in that had experience. If I did have an opening, which I really don't anticipate happening, I would do the same thing again, hoping that I could find someone with a different ethnic background that we could hire. Thank you.
Well, that question for me is a little awkward. You see, I've been in the Recorder of Deeds office for 23 years, and I am the only African American that is in that office. There has been, within the last couple of years, chances to hire at least one other African American, and that has not happened. As far as I'm concerned, that would be one of the things that I would want, because I would want diversity in my office. I don't want it to be all white, all female, or all male. I would like for that office to be diverse, which would represent the citizens of Peoria County. And as far as qualifications goes, we do need people that are qualified, but that office is an office that is a learning experience. Not anyone that comes into that office can tell you that they can do everything in that office. You have to learn that job, and I would be willing to teach whoever might be able to come through that door, and hopefully it would be another African American person.
What is your stand on the reentry programs for ex-convicts? Your suggestions and ideas?
Recently, and I think it's important, lawyers tend to talk in conclusions, and I think it's always important to address this from the standpoint of what are we actually doing. Within the last 2 weeks, and I should be able to tell you the exact date, I met down at the Riverplex. We had a meeting with approximately, no, I'm sorry, it wasn't. It was at the room at Samantha. We met with approximately 20 different companies that have an interest in hiring through a reentry program. So we are actively recruiting because the reentry program is necessary. I might also offer that my efforts to partner with U.S. Attorney's Office have paid off because the U.S. Attorney's Office likewise has a program for reentry that Doug Burgess is working on. So it's in effect, it's taking place, and there are employers right now that are willing to look at hiring offenders in a reentry program. So to answer the question specifically, we have already initiated an effort to reach out to employers, and there were approximately, I want to say 15 employers at the meeting. The one that structured the U.S. Attorney's Office in the federal government, there is approximately $1 million that's currently in our community, that's currently in a bank account, that is structured for reentry, and it's specifically earmarked so that there are funds available for the reentry services of ex-offenders.
If we're ever going to reduce crime in Peoria, we're going to have to do it by focusing our resources on those offenders that offend over and over and over again. Of the 7,000 arrests in Peoria last year, over 5,000 of those were repeat offenders. What I would propose that we do, if I were state's attorney, would take a number of programs, because there are no new ideas. There are just good ones. And Chicago has a program right now that is brilliant in its simplicity. What it does is when an offender gets out of prison, it is mandated that that offender meet with his parole agent, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the state's attorney's office, and social service providers. They all meet at a neutral location like a church or another civic building like a library, and at that meeting they welcome the offender back to the community. Served your time, we're happy you're back with us. We don't want you to offend again. If you do, the consequences are going to be severe. However, we want to help you get on your way. And at that meeting, they plug those offenders into resources right then, right now. And even David Kennedy, the Don't Shoot guy, says that this program has real and immediate results from a 1-hour time commitment of time. If it works only 5% of the time, it's worth it.
I'm going to try to combine a few questions for you, Mr. Iruli. Some of them are related. What would you do to reduce gun violence? And let's see, how would you evaluate the effectiveness of programs like Don't Shoot, which I believe you've already addressed to some degree?
And while I have strong feelings about Don't Shoot, I am hopeful it is successful. We have to do something. How would I evaluate the effectiveness of Don't Shoot? Is if there are fewer shootings. We'll know practically instantaneously if it is successful. With the level of shootings and violence in Peoria County, we'll know the following week. Just like we saw when the Peoria Police Department on June 18th instituted their annual task force. There was immediate results, the streets quieted, and Peoria became a safer place because of those activities. What was the second piece of your question?
Let's see. It was related to how would you reduce gun control?
Well, I'm not going to cut off my nose to spite my face. We have spent enormous amounts of time and resources implementing Don't Shoot. I'm hopeful that it'll be successful. However, if it's not, there are many other programs out there that we know work. The Peoria Police Department's task force, the hotspot policing, we know works. We've done it for the last 3 years, and each of those 3 years, it has been successful. Another program that I believe would be successful is targeting those repeat offenders who offend over and over and over again. We have to allocate our resources where they're most needed.
Okay, and this question, I believe, is addressed to both candidates running for state attorney.
Would I be allowed an opportunity to respond to that since I didn't get that question? Thank you. If I could, I'd like to address that. The aspect of hotspot policing, and the chief of police has mentioned this repeatedly, if you bring in a task force and you put a task force on the ground and they go to the corners, what happens is that there's the crime goes down for a short period of time, but as soon as you remove the task force, the crime comes back up. But what I think is most important about that, and what I have the most difficulty with hotspot policing, is that it is known that if you're dealing with a percentage of the community, the bad guys know there's hotspot policing, so they go underground. And what you end up with is that other 15% of the community that are the good citizens that live in the poorer areas and the depressed areas, and they get then this approach that is hotspot policing, and they've committed no crime. And so what you end up with is a deterioration between the relationship of police and the community, but it's the part of the community that's that 15% that are the good people that live in the depressed areas. And so that's why it is so important that we have a long-term program like the Don't Shoot program that deters crime and convinces people to put the guns down before the crime is committed without jeopardizing the good citizens that live in these poorer communities. Thank you.
And the next question is, what powers does the state's attorney have to take leadership in Peoria County in the fight against crime? Secondly, what powers does the state's attorney have in relation to city and county police departments in terms of getting programs carried out in the community to deal with crime? Again, what powers does the state's attorneys have in order to take leadership in Peoria County in the fight against crime? And secondly, what powers does the state's attorney have in relation to city and county police departments in terms of getting programs carried out in the community to deal with crime?
What powers does the state's attorney have to enact programs? The state's attorney is an elected official. He can't tell the sheriff what to do, but he can advise the sheriff. He can't tell the Peoria Police Department chief what to do because they're a separate governmental entity. But the state's attorney is the one official that can bring everybody to the table. And a properly crafted plan will get buy-in, like Don't Shoot. The U.S. Attorney's Office didn't drag the players to the table. Jerry didn't drag the players to the table. They came to the table because it was a good plan. And one of the things about law enforcement, because it is a paramilitary organization, for the lack of a better term, it has a hierarchical structure that once you get the players in place and you get buy-in by those in senior leadership, the ball moves downfield. With that, the state's attorney can be the leader in this, if the plan is a good one. In response to one of the issues that Jerry brought up about hotspot policing. That is a law enforcement technique used by the city of Peoria. It's been used over and over by the city of Peoria, and in fact, New York City, which is crime has declined twice as fast, twice as far as the country nationally, uses that as one of their primary programs.
Thank you. What powers to take leadership? I think it is very simple. It's called partnership, which is communication and development of communication among those officials that take leadership roles. That's why I'm so proud of the fact that in my experience and over the last several months, and I think I can clearly substantiate this, you have a U.S. attorney, you have a mayor, you have a sheriff, you have a police chief, and you have myself. We meet on a regular basis. Sometimes I think maybe that we keep saying we're on a roadshow. There is no ego involved with those members. I'm very happy. It's been one of my best experiences as an adult to partner with those individuals because they all have a sense of doing what's right to help this community so that the rest of the community can have a safe environment where children can play outside and parents can walk around their neighborhood. I think the leadership role is that of partnership and communication, and I think I have shown that, and I'm very proud to proceed in that same direction. In regard to the response on the hotspot, I think simply put, I would echo what the chief of police has said about hotspot policing. It's great. It goes out, crime goes down, but then when we leave, crime comes back up. And in the process, we deteriorate that good portion of the community that lives in that depressed area. Thank you.
This is, again, combining a couple of questions for Mr. Iruli. It quotes Mr. Iruli saying something earlier, that there are some things that we can do that won't cost a dime, unquote. What things specifically are you referring to as it relates to implementation?
The state's attorney in his capacity as the manager of his many lawyers allocates resources where they're most needed. We know without a doubt that gun crime is plaguing Peoria. We know without a doubt that these people committing these offenses commit them over and over and over again. We know that just about a month ago, a guy that was on bond, out of jail, awaiting charges on a weapons case, took a shot at a police officer. What we need to do is focus our resources where they're most needed. One of the things I'm going to do as your state's attorney, if you allow me to do so, is to create a repeat offender team. These lawyers will be assigned to these high-volume criminals who commit offenses over and over and over again. But their focus will be a little bit different rather than straight prosecution. They will do everything they can do to plug these folks into the resources they need, whether it's mental health, whether it's drug treatment, whether it's education, whether it's some other form of counseling. Because it makes no sense that the same people that commit these crimes over and over again, that we send them off to prison and to have them only come back just a few years later to reoffend again. We have to change our focus, we have to change the way we do things, and we certainly can do things better by allocating resources that exist at the state's attorney's office.
That is going to conclude this segment.
Could I have an opportunity to address those, or is that?
Actually, we're running over time at this time, so we're going to have to stop it there. We have some other questions that have come in as well, but we don't have time to address those. But let's give each of these candidates a nice round of applause and thank them for their input tonight.
The election of November 6, 2012 will be one of the most critical elections in our lifetime. It's your choice whether you play a part in how it's impacted.
It's your vote.
It's your education.
It's your vote. It's your job.
It's your vote.
It's your money. It's your vote.
It's your power.
It's your vote. It's your future.
It's your vote.
It's your right. It's your right. It's your right.
It's your right.
Vote like your life depends on it, because it does.
We have the candidates for the 46th Legislative District. Senator Dave Kaler, who is the incumbent, running on the Democratic ticket. His opponent, Mr. Pat Sullivan, running on the Republican ticket. Also, we have candidate for the 91st Representative District, Ms. Jennifer Groves Alliston, who is running on the Democratic ticket, and we should mention her opponent, Mr. Mike Eunice, who is the incumbent running on the Republican ticket, who also is absent tonight because he is receiving an award at another event, but he wanted to be here tonight. But we have his opponent, Ms. Jennifer Groves Allison, who is here as well. Let's give each of them a round of applause.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. I think we lost a little bit of the crowd in that break, but we should be done in a couple hours, really. Let me just talk about my record, and the reason that I'm asking for your vote in this election is that I'd like to continue as your state senator for the next 4 years. I've been in this office nearly 6 years. Prior to that, I had 8 years experience in the city council and 6 years on the Peoria County Board. So I think as a public servant, you have to understand what it takes to be able to get things done. Because what you are is you're a problem solver, you're a decision maker, you're a policy maker. I believe very much that you have to look to work in a bipartisan way whenever possible, because that's the best legislation. And in my experience with labor and management when I was director of Palm for 21 years, I did that. I worked to bring labor into management to look at their common goals and their common interests, because that's where you can work together, is when you develop that commonality. Diversity is a real strength, but you have to have a common goal and a common focus. There are really 4 things that I'm going to focus on in the campaign that we need to get done. One is to continue business development and job creation. That's very important for the economy. I'll point to some things that I was able to help in. Where government works with private business is really where you get the maximum impact. And all we have to do is look at Technology Boulevard to see that when $26 million of the state capital money was put into the roads and the sewer system, we now see over $100 million worth of private investment coming out of the ground, creating jobs, creating not only construction jobs, but permanent jobs as well. Secondly, we need to get the state's financial situation intact. No doubt about it, and we've had some very painful years. This past year we cut $1.6 billion out of the budget. Last year was $2 billion. And I must right now just say what a wonderful job Pam Adams and Dean Olson have done in talking about the realities of some of the Medicaid cuts. I voted for the Medicaid reform bill, but I did so with some real misgivings, and what they have pointed out is what has happened, and we need to come back and we need to take a look at some of the programs that we have slashed, and we need to readdress those issues. Because the one thing we have to do in trying to right our financial ship of state is not pull the social service security net out from under people. We can't destabilize our communities just for the sake of trying to balance the budget. We have to do both with that in mind. Thirdly, I think that what is going to be very important in this next couple of years is going to be the state's focus now on implementing the Affordable Care Act. Health care has now been upheld by the Supreme Court. It's a reality, and the states now have the obligation of really making that work. Because of my involvement, again, with Palm and creating a not-for-profit labor management cooperative health programs, we negotiated hospital contracts and physician contracts, pharmacy contracts, so I understand health care. The state needs to take an active role in making sure we set up the insurance exchange and making sure that we do everything we can to make sure that our 1.7 million people in Illinois that do not have health insurance right now are covered. Because when they are all covered is when we start to make progress on this. We stop that game that we're playing right now, cost shifting everything to the 30% that do have insurance. Lastly, let me just say we need another infrastructure bill. We need a capital bill. I would call it a mini capital bill because we still have infrastructure needs in the state. And I'll point to two primary projects that I think we need to get done sooner rather than later. One is Route 24 down to Banner and into Canton because Fulton County does not have a single four-lane road. That's a dangerous road. What that would do to open up economic development in that area is phenomenal. We also need 336. Again, that Route 16 is a dangerous road out to Farmington, and so there's infrastructure needs all over. So I ask for your vote. I have had the privilege and the honor of being able to serve you in the state Senate, and I look forward to another 4 years. Thank you.
I'm Pat Sullivan. I was born in the Warner homes down the street here. Came from a large family, 8 sisters, 1 brother, and 1 bathroom. So I learned to negotiate real early in life. We grew up with some needs, and so we understand what people are going through with these needs. I started in 1972. I married my wife, Lark, of 40 years. We have 3 grown children and 7 grandchildren. We want them to stay around. We want them to stay around this area. I think a lot of us want to keep our kids to stay around this area. Right now, they're having their doubts. We need to get this state back on track. We're broke. We have, what, $9 billion of unfunded or unpaid bills and in debt. We have $83 billion of unfunded pensions. Yes, we need to get this state back on track. Why am I going to do that? How come we can do that? We all have got to work together. I'm a businessman. I know how to have budgets, stick to budgets, and keep right on track. As of you do at home. Our system is broke. We need to fix it, and that's what I want to do. Excuse me. I would like to start working on our economic development to get our budget back in place. To get this budget that's way off base. We've run over 200,000 jobs out of this state, or people, I should say. 200,000 people that are not paying taxes that used to pay taxes. We need to take a couple of hints from Indiana. They're $1.5 billion in the black. They're not facing these $9 billion and $6 billion and $83 billions. We need to take a few lessons from somebody like that and the states around us. We need to bring jobs back, and that's what I do. I'm a businessman. I know how to bring jobs into the area. I've done it. They've piled mountains of stuff in front of me saying I can't do the warehouse district. We did it. We took a shovel. We asked for some help to shovel us out of that mess. And now you have a warehouse district that's starting. We have businesses down there. We have jobs down there. We need to do the same thing in the state of Illinois. We got put, the workers, us workers, got a 67% tax increase put on us. We can't afford that. That's running people out of this state. That's less people paying taxes. 43% increase on businesses. We can't afford that either. That's running jobs out of the state. We need to bring that back and take that window out and stop the increase of taxes. We're taxing too much, we're borrowing too much, too high, and we're spending too much. Simple business. I didn't go to college. As I tell my kids, I went to Knox College, hard knocks. But we have to keep simple business plans. We need to do that for all businesses. We cannot have secret deals in the middle of the night to businesses and telling them they're going to get a tax break. Guess who pays for that? We pay for that. Our kids pay for that. Actually, now I think my grandkids pay for that, the way it's been going. We need to bring this state back. We've got a good state. We have great workers. We have good businesses that want to stick around. But we've got to do it, and we've got to do it now. So please vote for me. I'm Pat Sullivan, and I definitely want to change the direction in this state, and I want to keep our family and kids and everybody here, all yours, all mine, and have a good education. Let's have good work, because we can do it. So thank you.
I appreciate you guys taking time to listen to me for a moment tonight. I'm not a career politician. I'm a frustrated constituent. I've always been interested in the political process because of how many lives that are affected by day-to-day actions in politics. I think my interest actually began when I was ending my high school career and preparing for college while my stepmother was preparing to have a baby. So my only sibling is 15 right now, and he's my buddy. But it really baffled me when I was at that point in my life how the insurance company could cover birth defects if he was born with them, but not her prenatal vitamins. So it was those discussions going on with my father that clearly I didn't understand. I didn't have that background, and it just didn't make sense to me. I think at one point he said, then do something about it. And that rode through as I went to college. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I always knew I wanted to fight for something, and it's something that had to be right in my mind. I ended up going to Western and pursuing a degree in political science with a minor in community health. When I left Western, I went to Springfield to work in the state senate as a legislative policy analyst through the ILSIP internship program provided by UIS. And while I was there, I ended up getting hired on and got to work with some great people. But I noticed one thing. There's so many pieces of legislation floating around. Nobody has time to dive fully into each of them. We rely so much on the people that research and help and provide input. Everybody has to get involved. And that's one thing. We see a handful of people that write in and get involved and contact their legislators. One thing we need to do now and follow through with is getting everyone involved. We need every constituent to get active, realize who represents them, how they represent them, and at what level. So it doesn't matter if it's too many ants in a neighborhood or your health care concerns. You need to get involved and find out ways that your elected officials can help you and what you can do to help them. When I was in Springfield, I analyzed legislation that went through the Health and Human Services Committee's licensed activities in local government, followed it through the committee processed, negotiated language, and one thing I noticed, I wrote many pieces of legislation, and we can try our darndest to make sure there are no loopholes, but they're going to be there. Once we know they're there, we need to do everything we can to eradicate those, and that's one place I'd like to start once I'm elected. Eliminate much of that waste that we see. So much of it is easy to overlook because it's been there for so long. Much of it, with our elected officials we have right now, they're so busy. We need to take a step back and look at that waste. That's where we're going to start financially, is to look at the waste we can get rid of. That's where you and I would start at our home. We'd look at what we can cut out of our budget to make ends meet, make things work. That's where we need to start with the state, because we certainly are in a mess. We need to think about the programs that are being cut right and left and realize how many people rely on those programs. Much of it is out of their control that they rely on those programs. So we need to realize that these are things we need to provide to people, and we need to fight tooth and nail to make sure we are doing the people of Illinois a service, not an injustice, just trying to balance a budget. That's something we must do, but we have to do it the right way. We have to get rid of that waste, and that's a term that seems overused so often in politics, but it's because there is waste and we have to dig and find it. Some of it's hidden. We have to get many people involved, but that's where I would love to get every constituent we can involved. We need to get constituent committees set up and have people come forward, whether they have a Harvard degree or life experience, it doesn't matter. We need to get everybody involved in the process to find how we can get Illinois back on track. Following up, when I left Springfield, I come back here. My husband and I moved back here to the Peoria area. We've been back about 5 years. I'm with the American Red Cross Blood Services, and I enjoy that job very much. Since we've been back, we've had a little girl, and she's my ultimate reason for running. I'm very concerned about her future. She just turned 4 last Wednesday, and she's the best campaign manager in the world. But she's amazing. She's my reason for running. And if anybody has any questions, we'd love to hear them. Thank you, guys.
This first question is for each of the candidates on the panel. Debt restructuring is one way for Illinois to pay the huge backlog of unpaid bills owed to thousands of vendors who have provided services and goods to the state. Do you support debt restructuring as soon as possible so that human service providers in this community and many others can be paid for services provided to those most in need among us? I'll allow Senator Kaler to address first.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We should bond that indebtedness. We should pay our bills. Right now, any private vendor that we owe money to, we're paying 1% interest per month. That's 12% a year. We could bond that and save a lot of interest. But more than that, we shouldn't balance this budget on the backs of those that do business with the state of Illinois. And I've talked to school districts, I've talked to all kinds of groups that we owe money to, and I said, would it make a difference in your budgeting for next year if we just paid you what we owed you? I said, yeah, absolutely. Now, the reason we can't get that done is that we need 1 Republican vote in the Senate because it has to have a 3/5 majority, and we can't get that. Now, hopefully after we get through with the election, because I know it's a big political issue, hopefully after we come back after the election, we can actually get down to business and solve some of the problems of the state.
Mr. Sullivan.
Could you repeat that question, please?
Do you support debt restructuring as soon as possible so that the human service providers in this community and many others can be paid for services provided to those most in need among us?
Most definitely, if we can get it. Right now we're in such a hole. Moody's drug our credit rating down again. We're in a hole. We need to dig out of that hole first. We need to take a look at some of these things that needs to be done. We have cars and phones that need to be cut. I could give you a whole list of planes, and we need to take these lavish things that they call working tools and bring them into a pool and sell them. Let's start cutting where it won't hurt the people that need it. Let's cut where they've gotten too much over the years. We should have done it years ago. We need to restructure, yes, if we can. And that's why we got to get in there and do it now.
I absolutely would support that. Ultimately, we have to make sure we are providing the people in Illinois a service, as I mentioned before. One thing we have to take note of is so many people rely on the state for a number of different things, whether it be education or whether it be services. We have to remain constant. We can't just keep putting ourselves further and further down. It's not merely about numbers, it's about the people that live in the state, the children especially, and that's certainly where my focus is, because those are the ones that are losing out right now.
The next question, how would you, and again it's to each of the candidates on the panel, how would you resolve the teacher pension issue?
We need to bring everybody to the table. The teachers, the unions, we need to bring everybody to the table and hammer this out. I've done a lot of that. And the teachers that have paid their share are in a situation where they may not get it. That's a crime. We should have been yelling and screaming years ago when they weren't being funded. Years ago. Let's stop this. We have to balance a budget. We have to bring more jobs in. More jobs creates tax revenue. More people working creates I guess I take the business approach all the time. But the teachers' pensions, what's promised to those state workers, and I'm going to throw them with the teachers, is what has been promised to them is going to have to be kept. They put their share in. They were told that they were going to get it at the end of their working cycle. In my business, if I pay my carpenters or bricklayers and not pay their pensions, they come and audit my books one year or month, and then they put me in jail the next month. We can't let this continue on. We've got to start keeping our promise. We got to get this state more trustworthy. And that's going to bring businesses in. That'll bring the businesses that we're trying to get here. Not only to the ones that are here, keep promises to them, so they have, they're not going to get taxed more to bring another business in. We've got to have a good policy for it, a good sound policy to bring businesses in here.
The pension system is really two problems. One is that you have a current debt in terms of what the pensions are owed. That's about $85 billion. Then you have, going forward, how do you keep a sustainable system? Currently, the pension system in Illinois is not sustainable. Taxpayers are not going to put up anymore with trying to throw money at something that is not sustainable. Secondly, teachers and state workers, anybody who depends on a pension, they want a stable pension system because when they retire and go to draw those pensions, they want to know that it's there. There was one pension bill that came out of the Senate for SERS, the state workers. I voted against it because I didn't think it was fair. I think we have to do pension reform, but we have to do it in a fair way. And the fairest way that I know is to almost means test it and say, let's protect those folks at the bottom end of the pension spectrum. And let's look at what we do at the top end, take the excesses out of the top. When I was on the Senate floor in May, I had a call from a teacher who said, I want you to hear my side of the pension story, because we hear about all these fat cats living on state pensions and that. She says, I live on about $30,000 a year. I don't get Social Security. I don't even get Medicare. Those are the people we want to protect. So we do have to do something going forward, but it has to be fair. The fairness test is the one that is going to make the most difference to me. In terms of the back debt, we need to bond it. Instead of paying 8%, which constitutionally we have to, we need to make sure that we pay 4.5%. And we need to bring that rate, right now we have a target of being 90% funded. The federal government only requires 80% funding. So let's move that down to 80%. But no mistake about it, we have to resolve the pension situation.
We absolutely owe it to our teachers, the ones who are so important in the lives of our children, to give them what they have paid into. I know as soon as I graduated from college, I started paying into my retirement, and was I watching it daily? Absolutely not. But it was a planning process. Just as these folks who are at varying different levels throughout their career, many of them are at the point of retiring now. Many of them have retired. Many of them have retirement in the next 10 years. They're scared, and that's absolutely understandable. I can't imagine thinking that something I'd been planning and preparing for may not and will not be there. Right now, they're hearing, we don't know what's happening to you. We don't know what's going on. And that's something that they don't deserve when they have worked so hard for us and our children. We have to not only hear their voices, but get them at the table for the solution. I'm not going to stand here and say I independently hold the solution to the pension problem, but I know one thing. I will make sure that every teacher's voice is heard. Many of you may not be in the 91st district, but we are all a community here in Central Illinois, and we will make sure that we get all of those voices out there. Another thing I will mention is we not only need teachers at the table, but we know all of our state leaders from throughout the state. We are downstate and we are strong, and we need to make sure that we can get our leaders on board with everything we do. So we all need to get a voice and get together and fight for those pensions that our teachers deserve.
Next question. Alternative compliance payments are made by energy suppliers to the state. The money is supposed to go for renewable energy credits, but they can be swept into the general fund. How will you stop the sweeping? This question is for Senator Kaler and Mr. Sullivan.
Sweeps are always very controversial. The rule on sweeps is that any fund that has a designated use, you cannot sweep the money so that the use is somehow damaged or impaired. But on the other hand, you also have to recognize that we have over 600 special funds in the state of Illinois that have a total of more than $7 billion. And so part of the problem is, and there are some funds that are restricted, you can't sweep them. And no one likes to do that, but when it comes to making other cuts, whether it's education, whether it's Medicaid, whether it's, you name the program, and you have $7 billion sitting there in which maybe only half of it is really needed for that particular, designated purpose. It's very tough to say we're going to cut these programs out and then we're going to leave this money just to grow and grow and grow. What we need to do is we need to make sure that if we have funds that the designation is critical to the state of Illinois, then we can protect that and we can pass legislation that says that fund is not eligible to a sweep. But again, it's like when the roof leaks and you look at the savings that you were going to use to do something else with, sometimes you have to fix the leak. So it's a tough issue, and I know they're unpopular, but sweeps do happen for a reason.
Yeah, the sweeps do, the rating of pensions do. We've got to stay on track. We got to get this state trustworthy. If we're going to say we're going to do something, we've got to keep doing it. Let's continue trying to bring businesses in here. Continue. You're going to hear that from me all the time. With a fair economic development policy. Sweeping, taxing, these businesses say that we're unsustainable. We're not very trustworthy. We've got to quit this type of practice. We've got to change the direction of this state.
Let me try to tailor this for Mr. Sullivan. Why do you think you can do a better job than your opponent, Senator Kaler? And on your website, under the issues section, it states coming soon. We're 6 weeks away from the election. When will you tell us where you stand?
We're telling you tonight. Yes. We'll have that updated. It's ongoing, and we've just been working on it. We want to make sure everything we say is to the point. I think most people come to a lot of these forums. Dave and I have been doing them for over a year. We'll get the idea. So my update will be, and the second part of that question was?
Why do you think you can do a better job than the incumbent, Senator Kaler?
I'm a businessman. I know how to have budgets, keep to budgets, create jobs, bring more jobs to the area. We have to do that. It's constant that we've run jobs and people out of the state. Let's get them back here. The more people paying taxes, it's called a bigger tax base, we can start crawling out of this hole. We can start paying down the debts. We can start paying into stuff and get it trustworthy. We need to make some good economic decisions to bring these businesses here so we're not doing deals in the middle of the night for one business and it's going to hurt another one. We have to keep driving this home. We have to make sure that we have these businesses coming here and staying here. Not that we almost got them, that we do get them with good economic business sense.
As we draw to a close, there are several questions for Mr. Sullivan. But I
feel privileged.
Yeah, I'll ask this one. Sure, if you like.
No, I mean the one about...
Quit writing questions, would you?
But for Mr. Sullivan, you made mention of taking notes from surrounding states. What specifically has Indiana done or implemented that Illinois should do?
Well, I think what they need to do, one of them would be, let's look at them with the workman's comp. I'm a businessman. In fact, my company laid this carpet right here. We hire union people. Guess what? If I hire a person, he works for me one day and hurts his knee, it costs me over $30,000 to fix it. If the company came from Indiana, it would have cost them $9,800. So don't you think we need to get this in line? We need to start doing these kind of things from Indiana and finding out. It's not only Indiana, it's Iowa, it's Missouri. We're competing with states around us. They're taking our people and they're taking our jobs. I don't mind looking out what other people are doing. We're in an island here. We've got some of the highest work comp insurances. They promised us they would lower it, and they didn't do it. In fact, mine's higher. So we have to really look into that.
We have several other questions left. Actually, we're going to have to call time there. We have yet to hear from another candidate. But let's give each of these candidates a nice round of applause.
Yes, my name's Steve Sonamaker from the Peoria County Clerk's Office, and of course the County Clerk's Office manages the elections in Peoria County outside of the city of Peoria. And to my knowledge, we haven't had a great deal of complaints over the years. I do recall this mailing, what was it, about 4 years ago, just prior to the last presidential election. Most of the complaints will rise on election day, where people, sometimes judges will ask for a photo ID, and that's generally not necessary unless it is a case where an individual registered by mail and failed to include a driver's license number or other ID. But if anyone feels as if they've been intimidated or have difficulty in voting at the polls, please call the county clerk's office if you're out in the county, or the city election commission if you have any complaints on election day. All the polling places, the county stepped up with the city this year. We provide all of our polling places with cell phones. If there is a controversy with some of the election judges where there's a disagreement between 2 or 3 judges, they're all instructed to call my office for additional information or to resolve an issue. So if anyone feels that they've been intimidated or for some reason denied the right to vote at their polling place, call the election commission or our office, and we'll see. That might be possibly, since we've had recently redistricting, not so much in the city with precincts, but we have out in the county. We've added 20 precincts in Peoria County. Some people's polling place may have relocated, and that could be the issue at hand. So, thank you.
Well, I talked to Steve, and a lot of what I think we're trying to do is make sure that the information that people are getting is correct. In today's internet and TV, and you can go out and find information everywhere, that doesn't necessarily mean it's always accurate. And one of the things that we try to do, and kind of is what we're promoting, is that anybody who wants to and is eligible is able to register and vote, and anybody who wants to and is eligible is allowed to vote, register and to vote. And so when something like this card comes up, or even, I think in a lot of cases, just some misinformation. We've taken a lot of calls on voter ID in Illinois, and I think it's just because they're talking about voter ID everywhere in the country, but we're not necessarily talking about it in Illinois. So we're trying to make sure that the information out there is correct, and that the people are getting the correct information and what they need to vote, and what they don't have to do to vote. There's a lot of misinformation. It's a presidential election. It's highly partisan. And so, I think our goal is just to make sure everybody has the right information. If they do have problems, I would echo definitely what Steve says. Please call us immediately. We can either get the right information or we can take action. If there's an issue in a polling place, please contact us. Steve, I know, is doing judging training. We're doing it now. One of the things we're stressing is a lot of these same issues, is that it's a highly partisan issue and people are going to think they have answers, so that we have to be careful on how to handle those incidents when they come up in early voting or in voting, that people think that, felons can't vote. Well, in Illinois, as long as you're not incarcerated, you can vote. You have to show an ID. Well, as Steve said, there's a couple cases you do. Early voting, you do have to show an ID, photo ID, but on election day, the majority of the voters won't need to show an ID. So it's just that confusion. Elections are run 51 different ways in the United States. Each state is different, and sometimes they're dramatically different. So we're just trying to make sure that the information that people have out there is correct, and that they have a resource if they have questions. So.
And we're just very concerned that people exercise their #1 right, and that's the right to vote. Other tactics that have been experienced in other states are Messages by phone, by mail, by text, by email, telling people that their candidate has already won, they don't need to vote, telling people that Republicans vote on one day and Democrats vote on the other day, telling people that their precinct has been moved. And if they go to the wrong precinct and scheduled a certain amount of time to vote, they may not end up voting and getting to the right precinct. So we're just trying to educate individuals before the election so that they are more confident voters. As well as, along with the NAACP, we are also we have recruited and will have poll watchers out on election day and will back up people to exercise their right to vote.